Commander Vex Taylor had seen many strange things in his 300 years of service to the Zephyrian Galactic Council, but nothing had prepared him for what appeared on his scanner that day. The Stellar Harmony was on a routine patrol near the edge of known space when his sensors detected something impossible. A ship was moving through space at speeds that should have torn it apart, yet the vessel seemed perfectly intact and was even broadcasting what appeared to be music. The alien commander studied the readings with growing confusion. According to his instruments, the ship was using a fusion drive that operated at levels far beyond theoretical limits. The energy output made no sense, and the containment fields were configured in ways that violated basic physics. Even stranger, the vessel appeared to be made from materials that his database could not identify, despite containing information on every known substance in the galaxy. Vex Taylor called his science officer over to examine the readings. Calaris was young for a Zephyrian, but she had graduated top of her class from the academy, and her analytical skills were exceptional. She stared at the display for several minutes before shaking her head in bewilderment. The readings show impossible energy efficiency, she said, while checking her instruments again. Their fusion reactor appears to be running at 340% of maximum theoretical output, but there are no signs of containment failure or radiation leakage. Either our sensors are malfunctioning, or we are looking at technology that should not exist. Vex Taylor ordered a full diagnostic of their scanning array, but every system checked out perfectly. The strange ship continued on its course, seemingly unaware that it was being observed. Its energy signature was unlike anything in the Council's vast database, and its construction appeared to defy several fundamental laws of physics. The decision to make contact was not easy. First contact protocols required extensive preparation and approval from the Council, but this situation was unique. If this vessel represented a new species with advanced technology, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. After consulting with his senior staff, Vex Taylor decided to take action. He ordered his communications officer to broadcast a standard greeting on all frequencies while carefully approaching the mysterious vessel. The response came immediately and in perfect Zephyrian, which was impossible since they had never encountered this species before. There, the voice said with casual friendliness, it was completely at odds with formal diplomatic protocols. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Liberty's Dawn. Nice to meet you folks. We were just heading out to explore this sector and maybe find some new friends along the way." Vex Taylor was stunned by the informal greeting. In 3 centuries of diplomatic contact, he had never encountered such casual behavior during first contact. Every species they had met followed strict protocols and formal procedures, but these humans seemed completely relaxed about meeting aliens for the first time. "This is Commander Vex Taylor of the Zephyrian Council vessel Stellar Harmony," he replied. "Carefully, we greet you in the name of the Galactic Council and welcome you to this sector of space. We would be honored to learn more about your species and your remarkable vessel." The human captain laughed, which was another breach of protocol. "Sure thing, Commander," he said cheerfully. "Why don't you come aboard and we can show you around?" "Fair. Warning though, our ship might seem a bit odd compared to what you are used to. We kind of built it using whatever we could find, and sometimes we are not entirely sure how everything works." This statement caused alarm throughout the bridge of the Stellar Harmony. A species that did not understand their own technology was dangerous beyond measure. Yet the scanner readings showed that their systems were operating perfectly, despite this apparent lack of knowledge. Vex Taylor decided to accept the invitation. He selected a small diplomatic team, including Calaris and 2 security officers. As their shuttle approached the human vessel, they could see that its hull was covered in what appeared to be repairs and modifications. The surface was patched with different materials and covered in markings that served no apparent purpose. The docking bay of the Liberty's Dawn was unlike anything they had ever seen. Instead of the sterile efficiency common to most starships, it looked lived in and comfortable. There were plants growing in corners, tools scattered on workbenches, and what appeared to be artwork on the walls. The air smelled of something pleasant that Kelleris identified as roasted plant. Matter Captain Morrison met them at the airlock, and his appearance was as surprising as everything else about the humans. He was tall with brown hair and wore clothing that appeared to be both practical and casual. Most shocking of all, he was eating something while greeting them, which was considered extremely rude in most galactic cultures. "Welcome aboard," he said with a genuine smile. "Sorry about the mess, but we were not expecting company. Let me introduce you to my crew. This is Lisa Park. Our chief engineer, Danny Rodriguez, handles communications, and Dr. Susan Cole keeps us all healthy and sane." Each human greeted them with the same casual friendliness that their captain displayed. Lisa Park was a woman with black hair who had grease stains on her clothes and appeared to have been working on machinery moments before. Danny Rodriguez was younger, with dark skin and an easy smile, while Dr. Cole was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Tour of the ship that followed left the Zephyrian delegation speechless. Every system they examined defied conventional understanding. The fusion reactor was contained using magnetic fields that created impossible geometric patterns. The gravity generators produced a stable artificial gravity using a fraction of the power that Zephyrian technology required. Most bewildering of all, their computer systems appeared to be running on pure chaos, yet performed calculations faster than the most advanced AI networks. Lisa Park explained their technology with enthusiasm, but her explanations made no logical sense. She spoke of quantum flux capacitors that were actually modified kitchen appliances, gravity wells created using crystallized coffee, and navigation systems that worked by asking nicely. When Kelleris asked for technical specifications, Lisa handed her a notebook filled with drawings that looked like artwork rather than engineering diagrams. The humans seemed genuinely puzzled by the aliens' amazement at their technology. To them, everything worked exactly as expected, and they saw nothing unusual about their methods. When Vex Taylor asked how they had developed such advanced systems, Jake Morrison shrugged and explained that they had mostly figured things out through trial and error. "We are not really a scientific species in the traditional sense," he said, while showing them the bridge. "We tend to try things and see what happens. If something works, we keep doing it, and if it does not work, we try something else. Most of our best discoveries happened by accident when someone spilled something or pushed the wrong button." This approach to technology horrified the Zephyrian scientists who had spent millennia developing precise theoretical frameworks for every aspect of their civilization. The idea of advancing through random experimentation seemed not just dangerous, but impossible. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Human technology worked better than anything in their database. Dr. Cole demonstrated their medical scanner, which appeared to be a children's toy that had been connected to their computer system. The device could diagnose conditions that the galaxy's most advanced hospitals could not detect, and suggested treatments that seemed to involve playing music to patients. When she scanned Kelleris, the machine recommended that she listen to something called jazz to improve her circulation. The communication system was equally baffling. Danny Rodriguez showed them how their universal translator could understand any language instantly, including ones they had never encountered before. The system appeared to work through intuition rather than linguistic analysis, somehow grasping meaning and context in ways that defied explanation. As the tour continued, Vex Taylor found himself growing more confused rather than gaining understanding. Every human system violated established scientific principles, yet functioned perfectly. Their technology seemed to operate on rules that the universe had not yet invented, but the humans used it with complete confidence. The most disturbing aspect was how casual the humans were about their impossible achievements. They treated their miraculous technology as ordinary, and seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would find it remarkable. Jake Morrison mentioned that they had dozens of other ships exploring different parts of space, all using similar technology. That had been developed through the same haphazard methods. By the time the diplomatic team returned to the Stellar Harmony, they were carrying more questions than answers. Vex Taylor spent hours reviewing the recordings and scanner data, but nothing made sense. The humans had somehow developed technology that was centuries ahead of anything in the galaxy, yet they seemed to have no understanding of the scientific principles behind it. Colaris suggested that perhaps the humans were not being truthful about their methods, but the evidence contradicted this theory. Every scan confirmed that their technology worked exactly as they claimed, even when it should have been impossible. The humans were either the greatest liars in galactic history, or they had somehow stumbled onto scientific principles that no other species had discovered. 3 weeks later, the Liberty's dawn arrived at Nexus Prime, and the entire galactic scientific community was buzzing with excitement. News of the mysterious human ship had spread through every research facility and university in known space. Scientists from 17 different species had requested permission to examine the impossible technology that allegedly violated the fundamental laws of physics. Dr. Kethmos was among the most eager researchers waiting at the docking station. As the galaxy's leading expert in propulsion theory, he had spent 2 centuries developing the mathematical frameworks that governed faster than light travel. The reports he had received about human technology suggested that everything he knew was wrong, and this possibility both terrified and thrilled him. Nexus Prime Research Facility was the most advanced technological center in the galaxy. Its laboratories contained equipment worth more than most planetary governments could afford, and its staff included the brightest minds from dozens of species. If anyone could understand human technology, it would be the scientists working here. Captain Jake Morrison emerged from his ship with the same casual confidence that had amazed Commander Vex Taylor. He looked around at the massive space station with obvious interest, but showed no signs of being intimidated by the advanced technology surrounding him. His crew followed him out, and they all seemed to treat their arrival at the galactic capital as just another stop on their journey. Lisa Park was carrying what appeared to be a primitive food container and was eating something that resembled compressed vegetation. Dr. Chuthnos found this behavior shocking, since most species considered eating during formal occasions to be extremely rude. When he mentioned this to his assistant, the young researcher pointed out that perhaps humans had different cultural norms. Welcome ceremony was brief, since the humans seemed more interested in exploring the station than following diplomatic protocols. Jake Morrison thanked the assembled dignitaries for their hospitality and suggested that his crew would be happy to answer any questions about their technology. He warned them again that humans were not always sure how their systems worked. Everything seemed to function properly most of the time. Dr. Kethmos immediately requested a tour of the human engine room. Lisa Park agreed enthusiastically and led a group of 12 scientists through the ship toward the propulsion systems. Along the way, she pointed out various modifications and improvements that the crew had made during their journey. The human fusion reactor was located in a chamber that looked more like a workshop than a precision engineering facility. Tools were scattered everywhere, and the walls were covered with diagrams and notes written in what appeared to be dozens of different human languages. The reactor itself was a massive cylindrical device surrounded by magnetic containment fields that created patterns unlike anything in known science. Lisa Park began explaining how the system worked while casually finishing her meal. She pointed to various components and described their functions using terms that made no sense to the assembled scientists. She mentioned quantum flux governors that were actually modified cooking devices and containment fields that worked by convincing the plasma to stay inside through positive encouragement. Dr. Kethmos interrupted to ask about the mathematical principles behind the magnetic containment system. Lisa Park looked confused by the question and admitted that she had never been very good at mathematics. She explained that the containment field configuration had been discovered when an intern named Pete Williams accidentally spilled his coffee into the reactor core during a late-night repair session. The coffee had somehow created microscopic wormholes that vented excess energy into parallel dimensions, preventing containment failure. The discovery was so useful that they now added coffee grounds to all their reactor coolant systems. Lisa Park showed them a container of the ordinary-looking brown powder that apparently served as an advanced quantum catalyst. The alien scientists were horrified by this casual approach to nuclear engineering. The idea of using an organic beverage additive as a critical component in a fusion reactor violated every safety protocol in existence. Yet scanner readings confirmed that the system was operating at impossible efficiency levels with no signs of instability or radiation leakage. Dr. Kethmos asked to examine the coffee grounds more closely. Under analysis, they appeared to be nothing more than processed plant matter with no unusual properties. When he asked Lisa Park why coffee worked when other organic materials did not, she shrugged and suggested that maybe the reactor just liked the taste. Meanwhile, Danny Rodriguez was demonstrating the human communication system to a group of linguistics experts. The universal translator could instantly understand any language, including ones from species that humans had never encountered before. The translation matrix appeared to work through pure intuition rather than linguistic analysis, somehow grasping meaning and emotional context in ways that defied explanation when asked to describe the technical specifications. Danny Rodriguez pulled out a device that looked like a child's toy. He explained that the translator worked by listening to the vibes of whatever someone was saying and then figuring out what they probably meant. The system could understand sarcasm, detect lies, and even translate emotional subtext that most speakers were not consciously aware. The linguistics experts tried to analyze the translation algorithms, but discovered that the system had no recognizable programming. Instead, it appeared to be running on what could only be described as organized chaos. Random number generators produced patterns that somehow contained meaningful information, and the computer processed data using methods that should have resulted in complete failure. Dr. Cole was simultaneously amazing and horrifying the medical experts with demonstrations of human healing technology. Their medical scanner was another modified toy that somehow examined patients at the quantum level. The device could diagnose conditions that the galaxy's most advanced hospitals could not detect, and suggested treatments that seemed to involve playing different types of music to patients. Heavy metal music apparently repaired bone fractures by encouraging calcium molecules to dance into proper alignment. Jazz fixed neurological disorders by helping neurons find their rhythm. Country music somehow regrew lost limbs, though. Dr. Cole admitted they had not figured out exactly why that particular genre was effective for tissue regeneration. The medical experts verified that every treatment worked perfectly, despite violating everything they knew about biology, physics, and dimensional mechanics. When they asked Dr. Cole to explain the scientific principles behind her methods, she handed them a collection of music recordings and suggested they listen to them while thinking positive thoughts. Demonstration continued for hours, and each new revelation left the alien scientists more bewildered than before. Human technology operated on principles that seemed to involve consciousness, intention, and what they called good vibes rather than mathematical laws and physical constants. The most disturbing aspect was how normal everything seemed to the humans. They treated their miraculous technology as ordinary household items and appeared genuinely surprised that anyone would find their methods unusual. Lisa Park mentioned that back on Earth, millions of humans used similar technology every day without giving it much thought. By the end of the first day, the research teams had filled hundreds of pages with observations, but had made no progress toward understanding how anything worked. Every attempt to analyze human technology using conventional methods resulted in complete failure. The systems appeared to operate on rules that the universe had not yet invented. Archethmos called an emergency meeting of his senior research staff. The assembled scientists represented the finest minds in the galaxy, but they were all equally baffled by what they had witnessed. Several theories were proposed ranging from advanced physics beyond their understanding to the possibility that humans had made contact with beings from higher dimensions. The most popular theory was proposed by Dr. Yeleth, a quantum physicist from the Arcturian Republic. She suggested that human consciousness somehow interacted with reality at a fundamental level, allowing them to alter physical laws through willpower and positive thinking. This theory was immediately dismissed by most scientists as impossible. But no one could offer a better explanation. Jake Morrison attended the meeting and listened politely as the experts discussed various theories about his species' technology. When asked for his opinion, he smiled and explained that humans had always been good at making things work, even when they did not understand why. He suggested that maybe the universe was more flexible than most people assumed, and was willing to bend the rules for species that approached problems with optimism and good intentions. This statement caused heated debate among the scientists. The idea that physical laws could be influenced by attitude and intention contradicted everything they had been taught about the nature of reality. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Human technology worked better than anything they had ever seen. Despite being based on principles that should not exist, research continued for days, with teams of experts studying every aspect of human technology. Each new discovery raised more questions than it answered. News of the human demonstrations at Nexus Prime traveled faster than anyone expected, and within days reports reached the hegemony fleet stationed 3 sectors away. General Zarthok had built his reputation on conquering species through superior technology and overwhelming firepower. In 47 successful campaigns, he had never encountered an enemy whose weapons could match. Hegemony engineering the initial reports seemed too incredible to believe. His intelligence officers described technology that violated basic physics and humans who claimed not to understand their own systems. General Zarthok dismissed these accounts as exaggeration until his science advisors presented detailed scanner data from multiple independent sources. The evidence was disturbing. Human fusion reactors operated at efficiency levels that should have been impossible. Their defensive systems appeared to manipulate probability itself. Most concerning of all, their medical technology could apparently cure diseases that hegemony doctors could not even identify. If these reports were accurate, then human technology represented a threat to everything the hegemony had built. General Zarthok ordered his fleet to move toward Nexus Prime, while his scientists attempted to analyze the human technology data. The hegemony had conquered dozens of species by studying their weaknesses and developing countermeasures. Every technology could be understood, and every defense could be overcome with sufficient force and intelligence back. At Nexus Prime, the human demonstrations continued to baffle the assembled scientists. Lisa Park had agreed to show the councils military experts their defensive systems, and the resulting display challenged everything they knew about space combat. The Liberty's Dawn was equipped with something the humans called Murphy's Field, which allegedly caused enemy weapons to malfunction in increasingly unlikely ways. Demonstration began with Council defense drones attacking the human ship using STANDARD weapons. The first wave of missiles simply missed their target, despite being guided by sophisticated tracking systems. The second wave experienced guidance system failures that caused them to fly in perfect circles before running out of fuel. The third wave somehow managed to lock onto each other instead of the human vessel, resulting in a chain reaction of friendly fire incidents. Dr. Kethmos watched the display with growing amazement. According to his instruments, the human ship was not using any recognizable defense technology. Instead, it appeared to be surrounded by a field that increased the probability of unlikely events occurring in their favor. Enemy weapons developed impossible malfunctions and targeting. Systems began producing random errors that consistently favored the humans. When he asked Lisa Park to explain the technology, she brought him to what she called the probability adjustment chamber. The room contained a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and kitchen appliances. Lisa Park explained that Murphy's field worked by convincing the universe that bad luck was contagious and that anyone trying to harm the ship would catch it. The explanation made no scientific sense, but the field generators were clearly producing some kind of effect. Scanner readings showed localized distortions in what could only be described as the fabric of causality itself. The humans had somehow learned to manipulate probability at a quantum level using equipment that appeared to have been built in someone's garage. Meanwhile, Dr. Cole was demonstrating human medical technology that continued to amaze and horrify the assembled experts. Their medical scanner could examine patients at dimensions that most species did not know existed. The device revealed cellular structures that were invisible to conventional instruments and could detect problems before symptoms appeared. Healing process involved playing specific types of music to different parts of the patient's body. Heavy metal music apparently convinced bone cells to repair fractures by making them excited about growing. Jazz helped damaged neurons reconnect by teaching them to improvise new pathways around injured areas. Classical music could regulate organ function by providing a steady rhythm for cellular processes to follow. Most remarkably, country music could somehow regrow lost limbs, though Dr. Cole admitted this discovery had been completely accidental. A patient had been listening to sad songs about lost love while recovering from an amputation when new tissue began forming. The regrowth process required the patient to genuinely feel sad about their missing body part while simultaneously believing that things would get better. The medical experts tried to analyze these treatments using conventional methods, but found no logical explanation for their effectiveness. Music was simply organized sound waves and should have no direct impact on cellular biology. Yet every treatment worked perfectly, and patients recovered faster than should have been possible using any known medical technique. Bobby Chun arrived from Earth during the second week of demonstrations, and his presence only deepened the mystery surrounding human technology. Despite being introduced as their chief theoretical physicist, he appeared to be barely old enough to have finished his education. When asked about his credentials, he cheerfully admitted to dropping out of college after building a working time machine in his garage using spare microwave parts and birthday cake mix. His explanation of human science involved concepts that seemed to blend advanced physics with children's stories. He described space-time as a large friendly entity that enjoyed helping people who asked nicely. Quantum mechanics worked because particles were basically tiny pets that wanted to make their owners happy. Gravity was just the universe's way of giving everything a hug. The assembled scientists listened to these explanations with growing horror. Bobby Chun was either mentally unstable or operating on principles so advanced that they seemed like gibberish to lesser minds. When challenged to prove his theories, he casually opened what appeared to be a small portal to yesterday, allowing the researchers to observe their own past conversations. Time portal demonstration caused panic among the Nexus Prime security forces. Temporal manipulation was considered one of the most dangerous technologies in existence and was banned by 17 different galactic treaties. Yet Bobby Chun treated his device as a harmless toy and seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would be concerned about its implications. He explained that the time machine worked by asking yesterday, very politely, if it would mind sharing some of its events with today. The past was apparently happy to cooperate as long as no one tried to change anything important. Bobby Chun mentioned that he had dozens of similar devices back on Earth, and that human children often used them for homework, help, and checking lottery numbers. The revelation the humans possessed widespread time travel. Technology sent shock waves through the galactic government. Emergency sessions were called, and security protocols were activated. If humans could manipulate time, then no defense was possible, and no secret was safe. Jake Morrison attempted to calm the growing panic by explaining that human time travel was very limited and mostly used for practical purposes. They could observe the past, but could not change it, and could only travel forward in time by waiting like everyone else. He assured the council that his species had no interest in conquering anyone or disrupting galactic stability. His reassurances did little to calm the fears of government officials, who were beginning to realize that humanity possessed technology that could reshape the galaxy. The casual way that humans discussed their impossible achievements suggested that they had capabilities far beyond what they had demonstrated so far. The situation became more complex when other human ships began arriving at Nexus Prime. Each vessel carried crews with different specializations and technological innovations. A medical ship Discovery had equipment that could cure aging and regenerate organs from quantum templates. The research vessel Curiosity carried instruments that could analyze parallel dimensions and communicate with alternate versions of reality. Most disturbing was the arrival of the agricultural ship Harvest, which demonstrated farming techniques that could grow crops in vacuum and terraform planets using nothing but positive thinking and carefully selected music. Their food production systems apparently worked by convincing plants that they wanted to grow bigger and more nutritious for the benefit of whoever would eat them. Each new arrival brought fresh mysteries and challenges to accepted scientific understanding. The humans seemed to possess solutions for every problem that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Disease, aging, resource scarcity, and even entropy itself appeared to be minor inconveniences that could be overcome with the right attitude and enough creativity. Most remarkable aspect of these demonstrations was how ordinary they seemed to the humans involved. They treated miraculous technology as everyday tools and appeared genuinely puzzled by the amazement of alien observers. When asked about their most advanced capabilities, Jake Morrison mentioned that Earth had research teams working on projects that made their current technology look primitive. General Zarthok arrived at Nexus Prime with a fleet of 80 warships. As the human demonstrations entered their third week, his intelligence reports had prepared him for advanced technology, but the reality was worse than his worst fears. The humans possessed capabilities that could render the entire hegemony military obsolete overnight. General Zarthok positioned his fleet in perfect attack formation around the lone human vessel and felt the familiar confidence that came from overwhelming superiority. 80 of the hegemony's most advanced warships faced a single exploration, craft that appeared to have been built from salvaged parts and good intentions. The outcome should have been decided before the battle even began. The Liberty's dawn hung motionless in space as the hegemony fleet completed its encirclement. Jake Morrison's voice came across the communication channels with the same casual friendliness he had shown during their earlier meeting. He thanked General Zarthok for agreeing to the demonstration and mentioned that his crew was looking forward to showing off some of their newer defensive innovations. Lisa Park could be heard in the background asking someone to pass her a wrench because one of their shield generators was making funny noises. Danny Rodriguez was apparently making a sandwich and offered to prepare food for anyone who got hungry during the battle. The humans seemed to be treating the engagement as a minor inconvenience rather than a life or death struggle. General Zarthok gave the order to commence firing and watched as his fleet unleashed enough destructive power to vaporize a small moon. Energy beams, plasma cannons, and guided missiles converged on the human ship from every direction. The attack should have reduced the Liberty's dawn to scattered atoms within seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The hegemony weapons began malfunctioning in ways that defied every principle of military engineering. Plasma cannons overheated and shut down automatically. Missile guidance systems locked onto the wrong targets, causing weapons to pursue their own launch ships. Energy beams somehow bent in impossible directions and began striking hegemony vessels instead of their intended target. Human ship remained completely undamaged while chaos erupted throughout the attacking fleet. General Zarthok watched in horror as his most reliable weapons turned against his own forces. Ships that had fought in dozens of successful campaigns were suddenly experiencing system failures that should have been impossible. Jake Morrison's voice came across the communication channel again, sounding genuinely concerned about the hegemony's technical difficulties. He offered to help diagnose the problems and suggested that the fleet might want to run some system checks before continuing the engagement. Lisa Park could be heard offering to loan them some tools if their repair teams needed assistance. Casual helpfulness of the human responses was more unnerving than any threat could have been. General Zarthok realized that the Liberty's dawn was not just defending against his attack, but was somehow causing his weapons to malfunction through methods that made no scientific sense. He ordered his ships to switch to backup weapon systems and launch a second coordinated attack. This assault was even more precisely targeted and should have been impossible to defend against using conventional methods. The result was exactly the same as the first attack, but with even more spectacular failures. This time, the weapon malfunctions seemed to follow patterns that suggested a malicious intelligence was orchestrating the chaos. A massive battleship's main cannon somehow rotated 180 degrees and fired directly into its own command bridge. 3 destroyers simultaneously experienced navigation failures that caused them to collide with each other while spelling out the word sorry in Galactic Standard Script, the most advanced dreadnought in the fleet became trapped in its own tractor beam when the targeting system decided that the ship itself was the most dangerous object in the local area. The crew spent 10 minutes trying to escape their own defensive systems, while the rest of the fleet watched in amazement. Bobby Chun's voice joined the conversation to explain that their defensive systems worked by convincing the universe that anyone trying to hurt them was probably having a bad day and deserved some cosmic bad luck to teach them a lesson. He mentioned that the probability distortions would continue getting worse until the attackers either gave up or learned to be nicer. General Zarthok attempted to adapt his tactics by ordering his ships to ram the human vessel directly. Physical collision should have been impossible to prevent using probability manipulation, but even this desperate strategy failed in spectacular fashion. The hegemony ships found themselves unable to navigate toward their target as their computers developed increasingly creative interpretations of basic directional commands. One ship's navigation system became convinced that forward meant backward and spent several minutes flying away from the battle at maximum speed. Another vessel's computer decided that the Liberty's dawn was actually behind it and began executing elaborate loops, trying to approach from the wrong direction. A third ship's autopilot developed what could only be described as performance anxiety and refused to function until the crew apologized for being mean to the nice humans. Engagement was becoming more embarrassing and dangerous and general. Zarthok could hear his own crews beginning to question the wisdom of continuing the attack. Several ship captains requested permission to withdraw, claiming that their weapons were obviously malfunctioning and needed immediate repair. The situation reached its peak when the Liberty's dawn activated something Danny Rodriguez called the awkward silence generator. Every member of every hegemony crew simultaneously found themselves remembering every embarrassing thing they had ever done. The psychological impact was devastating as hardened military veterans suddenly became overwhelmed with shame about childhood mistakes and social failures. General Zarthok himself was not immune to the effect. Memories of awkward conversations, failed relationships, and professional embarrassments flooded his consciousness with perfect clarity. The feeling was so uncomfortable that he found himself wanting to apologize to everyone he had ever met, including the humans. He was supposed to be attacking the generator, apparently worked by amplifying natural feelings of guilt and regret until they became impossible to ignore. Bobby Chun explained that the device convinced people's subconscious minds to have an honest conversation with their conscious awareness about whether they were really proud of their recent behavior choices within minutes. General Zarthok found himself calling Jake Morrison to surrender. The words came out before he could stop them, and he heard himself apologizing for the attack and asking if the humans would be willing to forgive the hegemony for being so aggressive. He also found himself requesting advice about his relationship with his teenage son, who had been difficult to talk to recently. Jake Morrison accepted the surrender graciously and offered to have D.L. Cole provide some family counseling techniques that had proven effective with other species. He assured General Zarthok that there were no hard feelings about the attack and suggested that the hegemony fleet was welcome to visit Nexus Prime to learn more about human technology. The entire engagement had lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Not a single shot had been fired by the human vessel, yet the most powerful military fleet in the galaxy had been completely neutralized through methods that no one could explain or defend against. Throughout the battle, the human crew had remained remarkably casual about the entire situation. Lisa Park had indeed fixed a malfunctioning console by hitting it with a wrench while humming what sounded like show tunes. Danny Rodriguez had completed his sandwich and offered to share it with anyone who was hungry. Bobby Chun had used the break-in activity to reorganize his collection of temporal measurement devices. Dr. Cole had monitored the psychological effects of the awkward silence generator and provided helpful suggestions for dealing with sudden onset guilt and embarrassment. She recommended that the hegemony crews take some time to think about their life choices and consider whether they might be happier pursuing more peaceful occupations. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves through every government and military organization in the galaxy. A single human ship had defeated an entire battle fleet without firing a shot or sustaining any damage. The implications were staggering, and no one was sure how to respond to this demonstration of impossible power. News of the engagement spread faster than official reports could be classified. Within hours, every species in the galaxy knew that humans possessed defensive technology that could neutralize any conventional attack. Military strategists found themselves reconsidering centuries of established doctrine, while politicians struggled to understand what this meant for galactic stability. Hegemony fleet remained at Nexus Prime as General Zarthok worked through his sudden crisis of conscience. The awkward silence generator had apparently triggered a genuine psychological transformation that left him questioning everything he had believed about military conquest and imperial expansion. Spent long conversations with Jake Morrison discussing alternative approaches to interspecies relations, and found himself genuinely interested in the human philosophy of making friends instead of enemies. The casual way that humans approached problems seemed to produce better results than centuries of hegemony military doctrine. Other hegemony officers were experiencing similar revelations as they recovered from their encounter with human defensive systems. Many requested transfers to exploration and scientific research divisions, while others submitted formal resignations from military service entirely. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The human embassy on Nexus Prime had become the most visited location in known space, as scientists from hundreds of species came to study technology that continued to defy explanation. Every day brought new visitors eager to understand how humans had developed capabilities that seemed to operate outside the known laws of physics. Commander Vextaller had taken a sabbatical from military service to study human engineering methods full-time. His initial assignment to investigate the strange vessel had become a lifelong obsession with understanding how human technology actually worked. After months of observation, he had published a research paper titled Chaos Theory and Practical Applications: Why Human Technology Should Not Work, but Does Anyway. His conclusion was that humans had somehow discovered a form of technology that operated on principles the universe had not invented yet. Their systems worked by convincing reality itself to bend in their favor. Through methods that combined advanced science with what could only be described as positive thinking and genuine good intentions. Research had fundamentally changed how Vex Taylor understood the nature of existence itself. His paper suggested that consciousness and intention might be fundamental forces that could influence physical laws under certain conditions. The idea was revolutionary and terrifying to species that had spent millennia believing in an orderly universe governed by mathematical certainties. General Zarthok had undergone an even more dramatic transformation. The hegemony had disbanded its military forces and converted their warships into research vessels dedicated to exploring the galaxy through peaceful means. Zarthok himself now led expeditions to find other species who might possess similarly impossible technologies or approaches to problem solving. He credited his change of perspective to what he called the Morrison method of conflict resolution, which apparently consisted of being so genuinely friendly and helpful that enemies became confused and forgot why they wanted to fight. The technique seemed to work because it was based on authentic concern for others rather than manipulation or strategic deception. Former General had also taken Jake Morrison's advice about family relationships and had begun regular conversations with his teenage son. The awkward silence generator experience had helped him realize that most of his conflicts were caused by his own inability to admit mistakes and apologize when appropriate. Dr. Kethmos had established the Institute for Impossible Engineering, where alien scientists attempted to reverse engineer human technology through what they termed controlled randomness. Their most successful project involved a fusion reactor that operated by playing poker with quantum particles. The system worked, but only when the researchers genuinely believed they were going to lose the game. The Institute's other experiments had produced mixed results. Attempts to create probability manipulation fields resulted in devices that mostly just made researchers feel guilty about their life choices. Efforts to develop consciousness-based navigation systems produced computers that became depressed and refused to calculate hyperspace routes. The breakthrough came when Dr. Kethmos realized that human technology required what he called authentic engagement from its operators. The systems would not work for people who were trying to exploit them for personal gain or military advantage. They only functioned properly when used by individuals who genuinely wanted to help others and make the galaxy a better place. This discovery led to a complete revolution in how technology was developed and implemented throughout galactic civilization. Traditional engineering focused on mathematical precision and predictable results, but human-inspired systems required emotional investment and moral commitment from their users. Universities began offering courses in optimistic engineering and positive technology development. Students learned to approach problems with the assumption that solutions existed and that the universe was fundamentally friendly to species that acted with good intentions. The curriculum included classes on creative problem-solving, genuine helpfulness, and what humans called thinking outside the box. The most remarkable changes occurred in medical treatment and scientific research. Hospitals that adopted human-inspired healing methods found that patient outcomes improved dramatically when doctors genuinely cared about their patients and believed in the possibility of recovery. Research teams that approached problems with curiosity and wonder rather than skepticism and cynicism consistently achieved breakthrough discoveries. Transformation was not without challenges. Many established scientists struggled to adapt to methods that seemed to contradict everything they had been taught about proper research methodology. Military organizations found it difficult to maintain readiness when their personnel kept having moral revelations and requesting transfers to humanitarian missions. Economic systems throughout the galaxy were disrupted as species discovered that cooperation and mutual assistance produced better results than competition and exploitation. Trade relationships that had been based on advantage and profit evolved into partnerships focused on shared growth and mutual benefit. Changes accelerated when more human vessels arrived throughout the galaxy. Each ship carried crews with different specializations and technological innovations that challenged established understanding in new ways. The medical ship Healing had equipment that could cure loneliness and depression by helping patients remember what they loved about being alive. Agricultural vessel Growing demonstrated farming techniques that could restore dead planets too. Lush fertility through methods that involved singing to the soil and telling plants encouraging stories about their potential for growth. Their terraforming systems worked by convincing ecosystems that they wanted to thrive and support diverse forms of life. Impressive was the arrival of the colony ship New Frontier, carrying 50,000 humans eager to explore the galaxy and make new friends. The vessel was so large that it required its own gravitational field generators, but moved through space with impossible grace, and Efficiency Admiral Kate Foster commanded the colony ship with the same casual competence that characterized all human leadership. When she met with the Galactic Council to discuss settlement rights, she brought a collection of children's artwork as gifts and suggested that the best way to choose colony locations would be to ask the planets themselves where humans would be most welcome. The children aboard the New Frontier proved to be even more remarkable than the adults. They played games that accidentally opened stable portals to parallel dimensions, taught rocks to perform basic mathematics, and somehow convinced the local star to change colors for their amusement. Their casual manipulation of fundamental forces suggested that human capabilities were still largely unexplored. Dr. Cole had begun studying human child development and discovered that young humans naturally possessed abilities that most adult species could never achieve. Their imagination and lack of preconceptions about what was possible allowed them to interact with reality in ways that seemed magical to outside observers. The children were also naturally diplomatic and quickly made friends with young members of other species. Their games often involved teaching alien children human techniques for creative problem-solving and positive thinking. The cultural exchange was producing a generation of beings who approached challenges with human optimism combined with the diverse perspectives of their own species. The most significant change came when the Galactic Council formally adopted what became known as the human paradigm as official policy. The new approach emphasized cooperation, curiosity, and genuine concern for the welfare of all species, rather than maintaining stability through military deterrence and economic competition. Under the new system, conflicts were resolved through methods inspired by human diplomacy. Instead of negotiations focused on advantage, and compromise disputes were approached as opportunities for creative problem-solving and mutual benefit. The results were remarkable, as long-standing conflicts that had persisted for centuries were resolved within months. The transformation was not universally welcomed. Several isolationist species refused to adopt human-inspired methods and maintained their traditional approaches to technology and diplomacy. These holdouts found themselves increasingly irrelevant as the rest of the galaxy moved toward cooperation and shared growth. Some military organizations attempted to develop countermeasures against human technology, but discovered that their weapons would not function properly against beings who genuinely meant no harm. The universe itself seemed to protect species that approached problems with kindness and good intentions. The most profound change was philosophical rather than technological. Humans had demonstrated that reality was far more flexible and responsive than anyone had imagined. The universe appeared to reward species that acted with compassion, creativity, and optimism while making life difficult for those who pursued conquest and exploitation. Vexilation concluded his final research report with the observation that humanity had taught the galaxy that the universe had a sense of humor and apparently liked them. The evidence suggested that consciousness, intention, and moral character were fundamental forces that could influence physical laws under certain conditions.